Alright, YouTube, as you know, Gaddafi was the next Adolf Hitler, and Libya is a shining example of progress now that he's gone, thanks to Clinton and Obama's foreign policy. Okay, now it's back to real news as opposed to what you'll hear from CNN or MSNBC or maybe Fox or any of these other rag outlets. Libya is falling apart. You've got two tribal groups that basically control the country. Then you get some controlled by ISIS too, which I'm sure Clinton is happy about that, since she has no problem taking money from nations that directly sponsor ISIS and then pretend to be afraid of them, like the Saudis and Qataris. But what apparently happened in this newest outrage of morality in Libya is that a shopkeeper somewhere there owned a monkey, and it apparently went after a girl and took her headscarf off. And of course, as you know, within religiously Islamic countries, the idea of a woman baring her hair is about the most provoking thing that you can possibly imagine. Not only because apparently it means that they're asking for it or something, but also there's a literal tale. It's also biblical. Christians don't believe in this, strangely, even though it's right in their fucking Bible. That women who bore their hair back in the old days, they got raped by angels, and thus it led to the rise of the Nephilim. And, so some, Jewish women, they'll cover their hair up. Muslim women do. Nuns do. So I guess nuns are the only ones resistant to this. I guess maybe the Catholics have it right according to their dogma on this point. But, that didn't go over so well when the monkey did that. And so the monkey, the shopkeeper, and several others got killed by some other tribe. Apparently the girl was a member of this other tribe, and so then the tribal leaders came out and they're like, oh, okay, calm down everyone, we'll figure this out. And the people didn't listen. They started shooting and shelling each other indiscriminately. Now we've got 16 dead because of a fucking monkey in Libya, and 50 more wounded, and there are probably going to be more casualties, let's face it anyway. I haven't even looked for an update, so it could be more since yesterday. Maybe as soon as the sun rose, they started shelling each other again. So you've got more than a dozen people dead and, 50 people wounded because of a monkey. Can you imagine that happening in Gaddafi's Libya? Now, I find it funny. The international community rambled and rambled about how evil Gaddafi was, for rumors that he had, a private rape festival all the time and, hoarded gold and so forth. And yet, did the international community do anything in Sudan with the genocide there? Save Darfur sort of stuff? When the Janjaweed were killing, 250,000 people? No, they set up a few camps where people could languish and get, bottled water and rice and beans, and that's all they had. And ultimately the country split anyway, because the South Sudanese were tired of dealing with a bunch of Islamists, which I don't blame them. I'm surprised Mali and Nigeria haven't split along ethnic and political lines as well. But can you imagine this having happened in Gaddafi's Libya? Thank goodness Clinton liberated this country. It's so much better off now, with ISIS and these tribal warlords controlling everything. So much better than Gaddafi ever was. Again, back to reality, it was better off under Gaddafi. They were making progress towards being essentially a first world nation. Their infrastructure, as far as Africa is concerned, was top-notch. They were wealthier than any of their neighbors. They were on par with a nation like Egypt, developmentally ahead of a nation like Nigeria or South Africa. It was the place to be in the whole damn continent. Gaddafi kept refugees from entering Europe. Gaddafi certainly kept the fucking militants out. He suppressed the tribalism of these sort of ethnic warlords. He did all of that while also ensuring that nobody in his country was starving. Sure, he purged a village here and there. Sure, of course he did. He's a tin horn. He's just like Assad. But was the level of violence anywhere near what we're seeing now? How did it help the situation? They're not even bothering to nation build in Libya. In Iraq, we went in, we destroyed the government, we destabilized the military, we left the entire nation vulnerable, created a bunch of refugees and other problems, and destroyed the infrastructure. But then we moved in and we at least tried to rebuild the rudiments of what had been lost. In Libya, they didn't bother to do that. They just they flew the no-fly zone, let Gaddafi get assassinated, and then they're like, oh yeah, liberated. I'm sure that all these militants and all these ISIS members running around never going to destabilize it. Oh no, people want to be like a European representative democracy. And it didn't happen. Thank goodness for the people of Tunisia. that when the same groups tried to rise up in their country, they beat the crap out of them and didn't succumb to them. Thank goodness for the Egyptians that the same happened. You look at a map and you look at all these countries that were destabilized by organic movements as part of Obama's own professed Arab Spring or Muslim Spring, or really it's midwinter there as far as development and philosophical progress go. You look at the map and it's a little bit mysterious how all these nations just line up in this enormous crescent. Iraq and Syria and Iran and Egypt and Libya and Tunisia, all these different nations. And the ones, keep in mind, the nations that didn't succumb are doing fine. Egypt's, relatively stable now. It wasn't there for a while. For a couple years it was real dicey. Now it's back to a more or less boring status quo. Tunisia, yeah, they've got problems. They got tribal conflict too, but it's at a simmer. It's not at a boil. Now you look at Syria. The area's under Assad's control, largely. Business kind of goes on as normal. It's difficult. They certainly got shortages of every critical supply, but they're making do, as opposed to the areas controlled by the FSA that are... Now, the FSA itself has probably ruined to frame Assad in half of these cases. I don't think that it's all barrel bombs doing this. The scope of destruction, I think, is well beyond Assad's capabilities, but that's just my feeling about it. You look at Iran, and Iran's, there's poverty, there are problems. Yeah, they're a theocracy, but at the same time, they're stable. You see far fewer people starving than in Libya, or in the parts of Syria no longer under the control of Assad/Iran/Russia. Then you have these same crazy people who thought it was a good idea to destabilize Libya and Egypt and all these countries, the Clintonians and Obamaniacs of the country. They think it's also a good idea to attack Iran, as Clinton said in 2008. They think it's a good idea to run a no-fly zone in Syria to ensure that it falls into disarray. My goodness, you're just asking for more terrorism in the world. You people are crazy. So, thank you, Clinton and Obama, for destroying the nation of Libya. I'm sure that they really appreciate it. Now, I think that's the reason so many of them are fucking joining ISIS. Why do you think, at this point, that there are tens of thousands of ISIS members that are from Libya? It's because you fucked their home country. They didn't care if Gaddafi was occasionally violent. They had food on their plates, they had roads, they had a home, they had the AC and so forth. They had enough to sustain them. Now they don't. Now half the country is desperately impoverished. You got to be in the very core of one of these tribal groups, the very core of them, to have any stability of life anymore. The outlands of Libya have already gone the way of Chad, or areas controlled by Boko Haram, or maybe northern Sudan or something like that. You people are nuts if you think that you've actually improved any of these nations. Not a single one of these nations that underwent any form of so-called revolution, which really means violent, militant, theocrat overthrow, or destabilization because of regime change, not one of them is better off than they were before. Every single one of them is more violent. Every single one of them is economically backwards compared to where it was at its height. Thanks, Obama. Thanks, Clinton. Yeah, you really helped, 500 million people living collectively in these nations. Now, nation of Egypt is no lightweight when it comes to population. You almost threw those people into abject theocratic slavery. Thank goodness their military is decent. Thank goodness they were able to go through the streets with their tanks and say, fuck the Muslim Brotherhood. Thank goodness they got rid of them. Thank goodness the Tunisians didn't fall. Thank goodness you haven't yet been able to destabilize Iran. You're so worried about Iran having nuclear materials and you want to destabilize them. What? Do you want all that material that can be compiled into dozens of dirty bombs to fall into the hands of some militant group that'll rise up if you overthrow their government? What exactly are you proposing that would be done about that? You'd have to let the Russians get involved. The Russians would have to march in. What do you think they're going to do? Reinstall the same government. Well, good going, genius. You'll probably waste billions of dollars on such an endeavor. You'll lose lives, you'll lose prestige, and you'll still lose everything. You won't make any headway. Good going. All your plans are working out so friggin' well. So yeah, Clinton's nuts, Obama's nuts, Libya's falling apart, Syria's falling apart. Thank goodness the Russians and Iranians are involved there. It's the best thing for it. It's pretty sad when Russian and Iranian joint involvement in a country actually makes the situation better. That's how stupid the Clinton foreign policy would have been for the next 4 years. Thank goodness we didn't elect her. I warned people it was about her foreign policy and her warmongering that disturbed me. I don't care about a 0.5% tax increase. I don't care about amnesty. I'm looking around the world, seeing what's happening, saying, you're going to get some atom bombs falling pretty soon if she actually does. If she's serious about her proposals, that's what's going to happen. A hell of a lot more people. You're sitting here worried about a couple of so-called hate crimes. You're worried about, oh, the alt-right, it'll cause some people kill themselves because they're transgendered and their rights are taken, which won't even happen. But let's say it did. Drop in the bucket compared to what happens every day overseas. Thanks to the foreign policy of idiots, idiot neoliberals and neocons, admittedly, like McCain or like Obama or like Clinton. Case in point here, as an aside before I end the video, you see what John McCain is now saying about waterboarding. If Trump wants it, we're still not going to do it, and goddamn him. That's funny. He wanted to waterboard people back in 2008. He thought it was a great idea. He was all on board with it when Bush was president. What suddenly caused the change of heart? You know, the only reason why he would have had a change of heart? WikiLeaks. Showing that the program was utterly ineffective. It didn't actually accomplish anything. Now, how funny is that? John McCain, the nuclear warmonger, probably the only person in Congress worse than Hillary Clinton when it comes to foreign policy. Now, all of a sudden, he's against waterboarding. Yeah, like he actually had a change of heart. That old crazy coot who can't even lift his arms, thank goodness. Otherwise, he'd be killing more people. He can't even press the little red button if he did get elected. He wouldn't be able to reach that far across his desk. He'd have to have a prosthetic or like robot arm. He'd be cybernetic John McCain or something. Screw John McCain. I don't care if he's a pal. It doesn't mean he's not a total asshat. Same with Clinton. The fact that she has a vagina doesn't mean she's magically smarter. In fact, she's a fucking retard. That's about all. Peace out.